sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media.
Well, allow me to retort.
I 100% support any group or organization that is anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-white supremacy, anything like that, right? But here's the problem with Antifa, and there's plenty, but the biggest problem with Antifa is there's no organization. I mean, it's a hot mess, right? It is not it's not an effective tool, right, to fight against or battle against fascism, racism, and things like that. You can't just be a concept, right? You can't just be an idea. You can't just be a narrative. Your actions matter. And with your actions mattering, then how the heck are you going to ask the American people to view you strictly from this lens, so to say, of, well, there's Antifa, they're anti-fascist, they're anti-racist, right? So as long as I can agree that I'm anti-fascist and I'm anti-racist and anti-white supremacy and all that kind of stuff, I support Antifa. But you can't ask people to do that when the only thing about you that is anti-fascist, anti-racist, and all of that is your, narrative, is your message, right? Your actions do not support that is what you are all about. Now, that leads, of course, to the real, the big issue, the problem with Antifa, that Antifa is a hot mess, right? It is a just absolutely disorganized. It's tough to really label them a organization or whatever the case may be, because typically when you say organization, you're going to have, right, leadership. You're going to have some foundational things in place that, kind of create the structure of your group or your organization. Antifa doesn't have that. So it's tough to even call them a group or an organization. But the bottom line is Antifa, the idea, right, the foundational concept of being anti-fascist, fascist, anti-racist, all that, great. But that's not what Antifa is based off of a lot of their actions, right? I'm not saying that none of their actions are in line with that foundational belief, right? Foundational structure. But what I am saying, guys, is that there's nothing, there's nothing that's going to, translate into anti-fascist, anti-racist by like burning down buildings, by looting, by, committing violence against people that you don't even know whether or not they're fascist or racist, right? We can't decide those things for ourselves. This is one of the things, and I've mentioned this in a video, and I'll do a full video on it, but weaponized grouping, right? It's 100% okay to be anti-fascist, to be anti-racist, to, stand on that principle, right? But it's not okay to decide who, falls into that category. It's not okay to, group people, to essentially utilize weaponized grouping. I mean, think about it, guys. Weaponized grouping is exactly what Hitler did. We're going to group them and we're going to say, this is who the Jews are. This is what the Jews are, or whatever the case may be. You create that narrative, you group people, you rob them of their individualism. Then you essentially, I always like to use the example, right, of Star Wars, because you can create this narrative, and then what you can do with an entire group of people is you can cast them as the stormtroopers. And the reason why I like to say the stormtroopers, now, think about it, right? Stormtroopers were faceless, they were nameless, right? They didn't have their own individual identity. They were stormtroopers. And when you think about it, right, when you're watching the movie Star Wars and stormtroopers were being killed, nobody thought to themselves, oh, well, that's sad. You know, that guy might have had a family. You know, maybe he's got a wife and some kids at home that now, how's the wife going to pay the bills that, you know, now that he's dead? No, because he was the enemy, right? So when you weaponize grouping and you group a certain, you group people into a certain group and you rob them of that individualism and you make them essentially stormtroopers, well, then what you're doing is you're making it a lot easier to commit violence against that person without needing to feel like you've done something wrong, like you need to worry about what effect that your violence on that person may have, again, on that person, on their family, or whatever the case may be. So, you know, what we see that with Antifa from the standpoint that it appears in a lot of ways that what they have decided is that Trump supporters are fascists. Trump supporters are racist. Trump supporters, right? Pretty much, if you're in a MAGA hat, you're in a stormtrooper outfit. We don't have to treat you as an individual. We don't have to bother to find out, you know, whether or not you are pro-fascist, pro-racist, you know, a racist. We don't need to bother to find out why it is that you support Trump, why you voted for Trump. Because, guys, it's not all as simple as anybody who voted for Trump voted for him because they are, you know, pro-fascist, pro-racism, all that kind of stuff. You got to start talking to people. We have to have conversations. It's I have a golf group that I golf with every Thursday, and you know there are Trump supporters in our group, and we have great conversations. And I know these guys, and I take the time to talk to them and understand why for some of them they vote for Trump, support Trump, whatever the case may be. And it's not because they're, you know, racist, fascist, and all that kind of stuff. But now it doesn't mean that there aren't some Trump supporters that are racist and fascists and all that kind of stuff. But again, you can't claim that you are in any way, you have some claim to be in the good guys if what you are doing is you are deciding who is the fascist and who is the racist. Because you're going to group people and then put those stormtrooper uniforms on them and say, go get them. Feel free to go and commit violence against those people, harass those people, whatever the case may be. Because they're wearing that red hat, that means that they are fascist, racist, whatever the case may be. It doesn't work that way. Now, the same thing, though, applies, right, to the other side, right? To the Proud Boys or the, pro-Trump, supporters that utilize the same weaponized grouping, right? So what, you know, the way that they kind of view it is if you are not a Trump supporter, if you're not in a MAGA hat, right, wearing that red hat, flying the Trump flag, you're the radical left, right? You are pro-Antifa. You're pro-violence, right? You're pro-destruction. You're pro-looting or any of that kind of stuff. Or you are pro-violence being done to us. You want to see us get attacked and suffer violence and all that kind of stuff. Because if you're not part of our group, then you must be with them. Us versus them. Storytelling 101, guys. The frickin' plot of Star Wars, right? Good versus evil, battle for the soul of this country, all of that BS. But again, I don't support Trump. You're not going to see me in a MAGA hat. But I also don't support violence against, anybody. I don't support defunding the police. I don't support open border. I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole thing as to where I fall on certain, views and stuff like that. But the point being is, I'm not going, I cannot be categorized or understood as to who I am, how I feel, and what, my opinion and thoughts are on certain issues and views and different things like that when it comes to this country, simply by, looking at me and saying, is he in a red hat or is he not in a red hat? That's just not, that's not the way it works either, guys. So both sides are guilty of it. So again, to make 100% clear, anybody who commits violence against other people because of their political beliefs, because of what political party they identify with, or what particular political person that they support, absolutely against that. Those people are an enemy of this country. They need to be called out. Needs to stop. Anybody who supports destruction of property, looting, things like that, absolutely condemn it. No place for that. Anybody who supports anarchy and wanting to see harm come to this country, to the citizens of this country, absolutely condemn it. Condemn them. Anybody who groups others, who essentially participates in weaponized grouping in order to rob people of being an individual and put them into a group, and then therefore try to be able to use that to justify any of those actions, violence, things like that, absolutely condemn it. There's no place for that. You're an enemy of this country. You're an enemy of the people. Simple. I hope that that's about as direct as I can make it. And on the other side of things, anybody who pushes the narrative or has bought into the narrative and acts off of this narrative, that anybody who doesn't support Donald Trump is pro Antifa, is pro violence against, people for their political, stance or whatever the case may be, is pro destruction, pro looting, that anybody who does not have on that MAGA hat and who does not agree with us and who does not support Donald Trump and what we believe is best for this country and all that kind of stuff, well, then you must be pro-communist, pro-socialism. You hate this country. You're not American. You're unpatriotic because you don't wear the red hat. Anybody who believes that, who essentially operates off of that narrative, my message to you is go fuck yourself, because you have your head so far up your fucking ass that you're going to be impossible to take seriously, or whatever the case may be. You are just as much of an enemy of the people, just as much an enemy to this country, because all you're doing is making some claim that you have the greater good on your side, and you're choosing to take away my right, my ability to be an individual. You're participating in weaponized grouping as well. Just because somebody doesn't wear a MAGA hat does not mean that they are pro-Antifa, that they want to defund the police, that they are pro-communism and all this bullshit that gets spun into the narrative machine. We have to start at least having that mutual respect and agreement amongst each other. I'm not going to decide who you are and what you stand for and different things like that because you have a MAGA hat on. But it needs to work both ways. You need to agree that you're not going to decide who I am and what I believe and what I support and all that kind of stuff because I don't have a MAGA hat on. So that's, guys, like I said, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at those narratives from all sides and disrupt them and try to shine a light on how narrative is being weaponized to divide us. And the more divided we are, guys, the more weaker we are as a country. Because what's going to happen, and it already is that we're going to take our eye off of the ball when it comes to mutual, common enemies, common issues that are facing this country and all Americans. If you believe that and you just, go off that narrative, then you're a simpleton, right? You're a simpleton. I'm sorry. You're like a child, right? Who got read that story as a kid, right? And you got all emotional, right? And you got all caught up in the story that mom or dad were reading to you. And then you go out the next day and you imagine that you're slaying dragons and rescuing the princess. Because you're a simpleton. Because our minds as children, we're like that, right? But now you're a grown adult, and yet you are still able to get fed a story, be told a story with probably the most basic, foundational narrative of all of stories, which good versus evil, right? And the story of you being the good knight who is battling the evil king to save the princess. So you got emotionally charged up when you heard those stories as a kid, when mommy read you that story, and it touched your emotions. But now you're literally doing that as an adult. Because if you are allowing somebody to spin this story to you, that you're in this battle for the soul of this country, that there is good and there is evil, and you're on the good side and you're fighting against the evil, evil empire, then you're literally, you're a fucking simpleton. You're a simpleton. And there's I don't even know if there's any hope for you. So I'm not talking to you. Like I said, you, as far as I'm concerned, go fuck yourself. You can comment all you want on any one of my videos, and I'll just keep telling you, you can go fuck yourself, because you maybe it's better to feel bad for you, but I don't, because you are an adult. And if you want to believe that it's as simple as there's good and there's evil, and I'm on the good side and that's the evil side, and I have this purpose in life that I'm fighting against the evil ones that are trying to destroy the country and all this, you're gone, man. You're too far gone. But for the rest of us who maybe hopefully after watching this video now understand what I'm trying to say here, is that it's not about me saying that being a non-Trump supporter is not the same as me saying that I support Antifa, or me looking at the January 6th weekend and the Proud Boys and what happens when they're and all that. That's not me picking a side. That's not me being pro one side or the other. What I was trying to highlight was how narrative works, and how what the narrative pushers want to be able to do is take a situation like a Stop the Steal rally and the streets of Washington, D.C., and use it to feed into a narrative that is designed to get the simpletons of the world to get emotionally charged up. One of the big problems I think that we face in this society is people don't acknowledge the existence and the difference between our analytical mind and our emotional mind. So let's look, I don't know the solution, guys. There's never an easy solution for things like this. The only thing I can throw out there is, let's make sure that we start to do a better job of condemning condemning this behavior anytime we see it on either side, right? Let's not participate in whataboutisms. Let's not try to give our side, right, the cover from these, from being condemned or called out for this stuff. I think, guys, that's the only way that maybe we start to make some progress on this, is that we condemn it, no matter, what side it's on. we start to introduce, and I touched on this in that last video, we start to introduce and make sure that people are very, very aware and understand that we can use the word and, right? Not everything is an either or, guys. Not everything just falls conveniently into this black and white. That's what the narrative sets out to establish, right? So you either are a Trump supporter, which means that you love America and you're pro-America, or you're not a Trump supporter, which means you're pro-Antifa, pro-violence, pro-destruction, pro-looting, pro-communism, all that kind of stuff. Simple, easy to understand narrative, right? The simpletons can easily grasp it. But most of us guys we're not simpletons. We know that it's not that easy. It's not that simple, right? So if you're not a simpleton and you're participating in that, that means you're doing it by choice, and you need to stop. Both sides, anybody who's doing it needs to stop, because again, it's destructive and it's what they want, because that keeps us divided. And the more divided we are, the more weaker we are. So instead of providing cover, we need to, again, allow and to come into the vocabulary. Biggest part of this narrative we need to blow up is this whole, it's always either or, black and white, easy to process. That's, again, that is designed for the simpletons to target their emotions. Here's reality. Committing violence against somebody because they're in a Trump, MAGA hat is wrong and needs to be condemned. And committing violence against somebody because they're not wearing a MAGA hat and because they're wearing a black sweater and you decided that for yourself that they're Antifa is wrong and needs to be condemned. It's not difficult, guys. Me saying that I know who you are and what you support, and that I know that you are a racist fascist because you support Donald Trump is wrong, and it needs to be condemned. And you saying that because I don't support Donald Trump, that I must be pro-Antifa and want to defund the police, and, I support violence and looting and all that kind of stuff, is wrong and needs to be condemned. Because, guys, again, like I said, I golf every Thursday with a group of guys, and some are Trump supporters. And they're not racist, fascist, all this kind of stuff. I know that. I understand that. I know why that they voted for Trump and all that kind of stuff. It has nothing to do with, pro-fascism, pro-racism, and all this kind of stuff. But let's also not believe that it's only one side or the other that's feeding into the narrative. Both sides are guilty of that as well. The right feeds into a divisive narrative, and the left feeds into a divisive narrative. There are outrage for profit, narrative pushing whores on both sides. And that's the biggest thing that maybe we need to understand, guys, is that the people that push these narratives, they're doing it for profit or some kind of gain, right? Typically it's profit, but it can be power, it can be your votes, whatever the case may be. And we're just sitting here, a lot of us are just buying into it, believing that, again, this country is as simple to understand as the plot of Star Wars. That there's good people in this country who love America and are pro-American, and then there's evil people in this country that want to destroy America and support communism. And that's as simple as it is. Easy to understand. So pick a side. You want to be with the good guys, or you want to be with the bad guys? And then you pick your side. Then you get in your bubble. And then you listen to those people, and you follow certain people on Twitter or watch certain YouTube channels or whatever the case may be. And that's it. Now you're just in the machine. You're being fed your narrative.